I keep a small cactus on my kitchen windowsill. My late husband Charles bought it for me the year we moved into this house, said it was the only plant he trusted himself not to kill. He was right about that. He was wrong about a lot of things, but he was right about that cactus. It's still alive. He's been gone 11 years. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon in October while I was folding laundry. I remember because I had just matched the last pair of his old wool socks, the ones I still can't bring myself to throw away, and the phone buzzed on the dresser and I almost didn't answer it. I didn't recognize the number at first. Then I saw the Houston area code and I picked up. It was my son-in-law, Brandon. Not my daughter. Brandon, he called me. Not Melissa, not my daughter of 34 years. He called me to tell me that they had found a house, a 4-bedroom in the Heights neighborhood, good school district, nice yard, and they were a little short. Just a little, he said, just enough for the down payment, and he wanted to know if I'd be willing to help. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I want to be clear about something before I go further. I am not a woman who says yes because she's afraid of silence. I raised Melissa mostly on my own after Charles got sick the first time. I worked 31 years as an office manager at a cardiology practice in Memphis. I clipped coupons when I had to and I didn't apologize for it. I know the difference between a favor and a foothold, but this was my daughter. And I told myself that's different. I said I'd think about it. I thought about it for 4 days. I called my sister Opal in Baton Rouge. She's the practical one, always has been. And she said, Nadine, you know how this goes. I told her I did. Then I wired $62,000 to their escrow account 2 weeks later anyway. I told myself it was a gift. I told myself I didn't expect anything back. I told myself a lot of things. What I didn't expect was that the thank you call would be from Brandon again, not Melissa. Brandon called to confirm the wire had cleared and to tell me they were very grateful and that once they got settled, I was welcome to come visit any time. Anytime. Like I needed a permission slip to see my own daughter. I let it go. That's what we do, isn't it? We let things go and we tell ourselves it's grace, when sometimes it's just avoidance. I let it go because Melissa and I had a complicated year. She'd had a miscarriage the spring before, and grief does strange things to people, pulls them toward whoever is nearest. Brandon was nearest. I understood that. I sent housewarming gifts. I drove down from Memphis for Thanksgiving that first year, and I slept in their guest room, and I made my cornbread dressing the way Charles used to love it, and I watched Brandon eat 2 helpings without saying a word to me, except to ask me to pass the gravy. Melissa was happy, though. Or she seemed happy. She had that new house energy, showing me every room, pointing out the crown molding in the clawfoot tub they'd refinished. She held my hand walking through the backyard and told me she was glad I'd helped make it possible. That was a good moment. I held on to it. But here's the thing about footholds. They expand. By the following spring, Brandon had started referring to the house as his house. Not their house. His house. Small thing, you might say. People talk casually. But I noticed. I'm 67 years old and I've been noticing things for 67 years. Then Melissa had the baby, their little girl Eva, and everything shifted in the way things always shift when a baby comes. The center of gravity changes. And I was glad. I drove down 3 times in the first year. I rocked that baby at 2 in the morning so Melissa could sleep. I stocked their freezer with meals. I bought the crib, the stroller, the baby monitor system Brandon had picked out, and Melissa had texted me a screenshot of without comment. I didn't mind. That's what grandmothers do. What I minded was the summer of the following year. Brandon's parents, his mother Connie, and his stepfather Ray came to stay. They came for what was supposed to be 2 weeks. They stayed for 6. 6 weeks in the guest room that had been my room. And when I drove down that August to see Eva, who had just started pulling herself up on the furniture and saying ba ba and no with tremendous conviction, I pulled into their driveway with a car full of things Melissa had asked me to bring, extra boxes from her childhood bedroom, some pots and pans I'd promised her, and Melissa met me at the door. She looked tired. She also looked apologetic in that way that meant she'd already agreed to something she wished she hadn't. "Mom," she said, "I'm so glad you're here. It's just Connie and Ray are still in the guest room, so you'll be on the pullout in the office." I set down the box I was carrying. "I thought they were leaving 2 weeks ago," I said. Melissa looked at her feet. "There was a thing with their lease. It got complicated. The office pullout had a bar in the middle that I could feel all night. I lay there the first night listening to Ray laugh at something on TV down the hall, and I thought about the $62,000, and I thought about Charles and his cactus, and I thought about what my sister Opal would say. I already knew what she'd say. I stayed 4 days. I made myself useful. I played with Ava on the floor until my knees ached. I made Melissa laugh at dinner talking about some of the old characters from the cardiology practice. It was fine. It was mostly fine. What happened the next time was not fine. I called Melissa in September to talk about Christmas. Every year, Charles and I used to drive to Biloxi for the holidays. There was a little inn we loved, right on the water. And after he died, I started inviting Melissa to join me there. It was our thing, just the two of us, sometimes with whoever she was dating, later with Brandon. It was the one tradition we had that was purely ours. No one else's family involved, just the Gulf Coast and too much seafood and bad Christmas movies on the inn's old cable TV. I was telling Melissa about the reservation I'd been looking at, same inn. They had a suite available this year, plenty of room for the 3 of them plus Eva, and she got quiet on the phone. "Mom, I need to tell you something." That sentence. You know that sentence. It's never followed by something good. She told me that Brandon felt it was important for them to start having Christmas at home. That with Eva getting older, it was time to create their own traditions, their own routines. She said this like she was reading from something. She said she hoped I understood. I asked her what she thought. There was a long pause. She said she thought Brandon was probably right. "I want to be honest with you." I sat with that for a long time. I sat with it for weeks. I called Opal. I talked to my friend Cornelia, who has known me since we were 23 years old and who has never once told me what I wanted to hear when the truth was more useful. Cornelia said, "Nadine, your son-in-law is not a bad man, but he is a man who is building a life that has a very specific role for you in it, and that role is financial and occasional." Financial and occasional. I turned that phrase over in my mind like a stone in water. I want to tell you what my house means to me, because it matters for what happened next. I bought this house in Memphis 12 years ago, 3 months after Charles died. I used part of his life insurance and every dollar I had in savings. It's not a large house. 3 bedrooms, a screened porch in the back, a kitchen big enough for a table. But I picked every single thing in it. I chose the paint colors, pale yellow in the kitchen, a deep, quiet blue in the bedroom. I had new floors put in. I planted a garden in the back that took me 2 full seasons to get right. Charles never saw this house. I built it in his absence, which meant I built it for myself. That is a different kind of belonging than anything I'd had before. When I bought it, I paid for it. When I made it beautiful, I did that too. Nobody gave it to me. Last March, Brandon called me again. He'd been calling more, actually, more than Melissa, which I had started to notice and file away. This time he called to tell me that the house in Houston was getting too expensive for their neighborhood, that property taxes had gone up, that he and Melissa were thinking about their options, and that they'd been looking at houses in Memphis. I said that was wonderful. Memphis is a great city. I meant it. Then he said, and I want to get this exactly right because I have replayed it many times. He said, we were actually thinking that your house might make a lot of sense for us. With Eva, it's the right size, and you've got that third bedroom you're not using. You could stay in it, obviously. We'd cover the utilities. I stayed quiet. He kept going. He said it wouldn't be a permanent thing necessarily, just until they found something. He said Melissa loved the house and he thought this would be good for all of us. He said, and this is the part that I still cannot fully believe. He said he thought I probably got a little lonely there by myself anyway. Lonely. He said that word to me like it was a key that would open a door I hadn't realized I was supposed to be standing behind. I told him I'd need to think about it. I called Melissa that night. I asked her directly, was this her idea or Brandon's? She said it was something they'd talked about together. I asked her what she was hoping for. She said she thought it could be good. I asked her if she'd thought about what it would mean for me. She went quiet again. I told her I would call her in a few days. I didn't sleep well that week. I thought about every room in my house. I thought about the yellow kitchen and the blue bedroom and the garden that took me 2 seasons. I thought about where I would go in this scenario. The third bedroom that had been my sewing room, my home office, the room where I keep Charles's old books. I thought about what you could stay in it, obviously meant in practice, meals scheduled around their schedule, noise levels negotiated, my space no longer mine. I thought about what my sister Opal had said years ago about my mother's house. Our mother had let our brother and his wife move in temporarily and stayed in her own bedroom for 11 years, asking permission to use the living room on weekends. I watched that. I was 18 years old and I watched my mother become a tenant in her own home, apologizing for existing in it. I was not going to do that. I called my estate attorney, a woman I'd worked with years before named Shirley, who has no patience for nonsense and charges accordingly. I told her what was happening. She asked me 2 questions. Was my name the only one on the deed, and had I put anything in writing about the $62,000 being a gift versus a loan? I said yes to the first. I said no to the second. She told me to get something in writing about the $62,000 before I said another word about the house. I called Melissa 2 days later. I told her I'd been thinking carefully about what Brandon had proposed. I told her I loved her and I loved Ava and I wanted us to have a good relationship, a real one, not one built on proximity and obligation. I told her that my house was mine, that I had built it in the years after losing her father and it was not available as a solution to anyone else's housing situation. I said it clearly. I said it without apology. Melissa started crying. She said she understood. She said she was sorry. And then she said something that told me exactly how much of her was in this idea versus how much of it was Brandon. She said, he's just been really stressed about money, Mom. I don't always know how to tell him no. I told her that wasn't my problem to solve. Then I told her something I should have said much sooner. I told her that I had given $62,000 toward a house, that I now slept on a pull-out couch to visit, that I had never once been offered my money back or thanked by both parties, and that from this point forward, my finances were my own and no one else's business. I told her if she needed something from me, she could ask me directly, herself, not through Brandon, and I would decide then what I was able and willing to do. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Okay, Mom." Just that. "Okay, Mom." Brandon called me 3 days later to tell me he thought I was being reactive and that family took care of family. I told him I agreed. I told him I had been taking care of my family for 34 years and I was very good at it. Then I told him I was going to go finish my dinner and I hung up. I went to see Shirley the following week. I had her draft a letter, simple and clear, documenting that the $62,000 had been given as a gift with no expectation of repayment and no transfer of any ownership interest or rights regarding my property. I sent it to Melissa by certified mail. Brandon called twice after receiving it. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave a message either time. That was 4 months ago. I want to tell you about now because the story doesn't end at a door slamming. Melissa and I have been talking more since then, actually. Not more than before in frequency, but differently in quality. There's something clarifying about a hard conversation, the kind where you say the real thing and the other person hears it. She drove up with Eva 2 weeks after all of this, just the two of them, no Brandon. We sat on my screened porch, and Eva ran back and forth between the garden and the steps, and Melissa told me she'd been in therapy for the past 8 months. I didn't say I told her so. I don't work that way. She told me she was working on learning how to have her own voice in her marriage. She said some things she's been carrying for a long time, and I held the space for it the way I wanted someone to hold space for me when I was her age and didn't know how to ask. We didn't solve everything. We didn't need to. We just talked like two women who love each other and have hurt each other, and they're trying to do better. Before she left, she hugged me in the doorway for a long time. Eva was already buckled into the car seat, banging her little feet against the back of the seat. Melissa said, "Your house is so beautiful, Mom. I forgot how much it feels like you." I held on to that. Charles's cactus is still on the windowsill. I've been thinking about moving it to the screened porch for the summer. More light out there, and I want to sit with it in the evenings. I've been sitting on that porch more these days. My neighbor Frances comes over some Tuesday nights, and we drink too much sweet tea and solve the world's problems until it gets dark. I am not lonely. I want to say that plainly for anyone who needs to hear it. I am a 67-year-old woman living in my house that I built in my name with my money in the years since I lost the person who knew me best. I have a garden that finally does what I want. I have a cactus that has outlasted everyone's expectations. I have a daughter. I am slowly, carefully, honestly learning to love as an adult rather than just as my child. And I have a screened porch that belongs to no one but me. I earned it. I kept it. Nobody is taking it from me, not because I fought loudly, but because I said the thing clearly and I held the line quietly and I did not move. Sometimes that's all it takes, knowing where you stand and refusing to step back. I learned that late. I'm telling you now, so maybe you don't have to. I've been sitting with this story for a while before I told it out loud. Not because it's too painful. It's not anymore, but because I wanted to understand it first, fully. The way you have to let a hard thing settle before you can see the shape of it clearly. What happened between me and my daughter and her husband didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of a long pattern of small choices, mine as much as theirs. Every time I said yes when I meant no. Every time I wrote the check because it was easier than the conversation. Every time I let the silence stand because I told myself love was supposed to be patient, and patient meant quiet. That's the part nobody talks about. We spend so much time naming what other people did wrong that we miss the part where we train them how to treat us. I am not saying what Brandon did was right. It wasn't. Calling a 67-year-old woman lonely to get access to her house, the house she built with her own hands and her own grief, that's a particular kind of disrespect that doesn't deserve softening. But I had spent years making myself easy to overlook. I showed up without being asked and left without being thanked and came back anyway. I made it very comfortable to take me for granted. The $62,000 I gave Melissa and Brandon, I don't regret giving it. I regret that I gave it without a single honest conversation about what I needed in return, which was nothing complicated. Just to be treated like a person who mattered in the story, not just a resource at the edge of it. I didn't say that. I assumed it was understood. It wasn't. That's where the real work is. Not in punishing people who take too much, but in getting honest with yourself about why you kept giving without limit. I wasn't just being generous. I was also being afraid. Afraid that if I said no, Melissa would love me less. Afraid that setting a boundary would confirm some quiet fear I had about being difficult, being too much, being the kind of mother who makes things hard. I let that fear run the show for too long. When I finally said the real thing, when I told Melissa that my house was mine, that my finances were mine, that she could come to me directly or not at all, something shifted. Not immediately. Not easily. But it shifted. Because the truth has a different weight than everything around it. People feel it even when it's uncomfortable. Melissa is working on herself. I see it when she visits. She's learning to have a voice in her own life, which means she's learning something I didn't teach her well enough when she was young. That's something I carry. Not with guilt. Guilt is useless past a certain point. But with awareness. The things we don't say, the limits we don't hold, they pass forward. Our children learn from what we do far more than from what we tell them. What I know now, at 67, after all of it, the loss of Charles, the long years of building this life on my own, the 62,000, the pull-out couch, the phone call from Brandon, is that self-respect is not a personality trait. It's a practice. You have to choose it again and again in small moments and large ones, even when choosing it costs you something. I kept my house. More than that, I kept myself. That's the part worth holding on to.